Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. So today I'm delighted to be joined by a thriving adoptee, Michele Kriegman. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I've long loved your podcast. It's really nice to now get to talk with you.
Fantastic. So Michele is an adoptee. She's an author, and we're going to get onto that towards the end of our conversation. But what I wanted to start by asking you, Michele, is a little bit about your search for your birth father. If you could share a little bit about that.
Oh, certainly. I mean, my search came in, I guess, in waves. I was born in the United States, although my birth mom is in England and has been for a long, long time, but she went to university here. And in the United States, where I was relinquished at the time, the records were sealed and your original birth certificate with your biological parents' names on it was sealed away. And when I was an adult, that was true in every one of the 50 states except for 2. Today, that's no longer true in the majority of the United States. 31 states have some mechanism, some imperfect, for adoptees like us to be able to find out more about our past. So for me, gosh, it started when I got a call from London. You guys came out of what we call the fog a couple decades before any of the states in the United States did. So I guess in, what is it, the mid-1970s?
Yes.
Yeah, forget the
75.
legal piece of it. I guess the emotional piece of it was, oh, we can talk about this now. And that wasn't happening in the 1970s in the United States. But because England was more open and welcoming family members back, it kind of gave my birth mom some courage. And she got in touch with me. And that was wonderful but complicated. I was pregnant at the time, so I wasn't about to travel. And then I had very small children. And then she proceeded to not come visit for 3 years and cancel visits. And that was a surprise. She had been in a natural mothers support group in London for a long time, and I just thought, oh, well, she's going to be on the next flight over, and that didn't happen. So in those 3 years, I just started devouring every adoption memoir I could find, and what I started also finding is that in fiction, there's a lot of adoptees, right? Both Rome and Jerusalem were founded by adoptees. You have Romulus and Remus for Rome, and you have Moses, the adoptee, for Jerusalem, and both civilizations, at least mythologically, if not historically, were founded by adoptees. And I found, and you find that in children's literature, which you probably know better than I do, over and over and over. And that was an intriguing thing, but it wasn't particularly empowering, and I was getting very frustrated when my birth mother would cancel visits. And she did give me my birth father's name, and eventually I was able to find him. I actually hired a detective who was able to locate him and told him I would be calling, and it was the anniversary's a few weeks ago, because I spoke to him on a Sunday on the telephone, and we made plans to meet that Wednesday. It was Ash Wednesday. So in adoption, and I guess in a lot of life, we talk about the impact of anniversaries. Every anniversary, and New Jersey is very Catholic, you see every anniversary of my one meeting with my birth father, I see people walking around with crosses on their forehead, and all those emotions come back. This year I wasn't paying attention. I was trying to meet a writing deadline, so I was being antisocial and staying at my computer. And I was feeling really down, and it was almost like a physical undertow sucking me down. And it's like, everything's fine in life. Why? What's going on? And my husband said, oh, it's Ash Wednesday, remember? So I was like, okay. And that made it easier, of course, because it was not a beautiful reunion. We met once. My birth father was extremely tense. Um, and later he basically ended the relationship. And I didn't push. I wasn't very aggressive in trying to kind of elbow my way into his family life. And so I kind of put it on the back burner for years and years. And just recently, I've picked up trying to get to know my paternal relatives more because my children got me a Christmas present of ancestry DNA. And I wasn't expecting anything. A few years earlier, my husband had gotten us his and hers 23andMe, and they're all fine. And I found one cousin on 23andMe that wasn't on the other. So this is not an advertisement for one test over another, I promise. But the crazy thing for me was right before COVID, I put off taking the test because it was so disappointing. And then I finally did, and right before we started having lockdown here in the United States, I get my results. And there's a picture of a woman, and the very first sentence in her profile is, "I'm adopted." And I didn't understand genealogy, and I reached out through social media, and an American who's become very active, first through search and reunion for adoptees, and then has taken those skills to solve cold cases and serial murder cases with law enforcement in the United States, was a Facebook friend. And her name's Cece Moore, and she kind of went through everything and said, "Oh, this is a sister." Because in the results, it could be close relative to first cousin. She said, "It's absolutely not a first cousin. This is your sister. Congratulations." And I did what a lot of us do, which is pick up the phone, call strangers because it might be the correct Melissa. Her name was Melissa. And what I found is what nobody wants to find. I think I made like 15 phone calls. I was searching every single social media platform. And finally, I was at wit's end, and I did an image search on a search engine. And those are the worst. Those are the least reliable. But what came up was a photo that looked like the photo on Ancestry. So if you're having trouble finding the words to connect you with family, I recommend using images. This I wasn't quite ready for. I click on the image that is Melissa, and it's a GoFundMe site for her funeral. Yeah. And it turns out her best friend, she'd known since they were 4 years old, had paid for was paying for the funeral and the memorial. And this was also a way for her friend Lisa to let people know that she had passed, which was a lot to take in. And I thought, well, it feels so rude. You don't go and network at a funeral, right? And I'm sure the etiquette is not that you go and network at a GoFundMe site for a funeral. But I was, I don't know, Simon, it was not like me, but I thought, I've tried so hard. I've waited so long. I waited too long because she had taken her DNA test way back in 2016 when I had written them off. And I wish I hadn't done that. So I actually said, I was trying to be discreet, but I said, it appears that I'm a relative. I'm an adoptee too. And wonderfully, Lisa got in touch with me and we started a correspondence. And also another woman who had been Melissa's babysitter, almost a nanny, got in touch with me also when she saw my note on the GoFundMe site. And then nothing happened. But then vaccines happened, and thank you again to modern science. We all got vaccinated. I flew to Florida, and we were very cautious. My husband called. We met in a public place in case the other person was dangerous and whatever, because there's something, I still, I don't know about where you are, but there's still the fear of the unknown. So, you know, we're changelings. We're not just people. We're changelings that appear. And are we here for money, or are we here for some other mysterious dark reason? And for, I think that's how some people view us, you know, and for us, sometimes it's, wow, we're going back into that dark unknown, you know, this deep mythological cave. And so my husband, on schedule, called to check and make sure everything was okay. And one of her daughters called to check to make sure everything was okay for her. And we both kind of laughed because it was more than okay. It was wonderful because she got to share her lifelong friend with probably the best audience ever. Like, there's no one that could have been more interested in listening to every childhood story she had to share than me. I loved it. And that breakfast lasted 6 hours.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting. And that was, well, it was back the end of June, beginning of July of 2021. And
So, I mean, there's so much there, isn't there?
mhm.
What, you know, this you said at the start that you know, your search came in waves, and my search came in waves as well. You know, so I got, as you say, our records here in the UK were opened as in 1975, which I was talking to my mum about this the other day, and she said that she was. My mum doesn't get angry about stuff, right? She said that she was angry when that happened because when I was adopted in 1967, they were told that nobody would ever know. They chose to tell me, and they told some people, I guess, I don't know, you know, they told the family, they told anybody that, well, I don't. But they felt, my mum felt that was disempowering for them. But anyway, so that happened in 1975. I got my original birth certificate, I don't know, 8 years ago, and that was kind of enough for me at that stage.
Oh, I understand that.
It was kind of, it was a bit, I just remember holding this, and it was a crappy piece of paper, right? It was like, you know, it was, say, original birth certificate, you know, you're thinking a nice card, certificate with a crest on it, you know, something
Crest,
that
it should be have gilt trim around the edges.
yeah, or something like that. That's what you're thinking, right? Original birth certificate. It wasn't. It was just like a crappy piece of photocopy paper with a government, you know, crappy text, and you know, but it had it had the name. It had her name on it, and it had my original name, you know. And I thought,
Oh, can I ask, what was your original name?
David Anthony Flower.
Oh, I like that name too.
And I thought, oh, I've had two names. And
isn't that a surprise? But and you didn't know that growing up, I guess, right?
no.
Mm.
And then, like, when people say we adoptees struggle with identity, like, well, we've had two names. I've had two names.
Yeah.
So I'm not confused by that. Where I see as a little kind of existential philosophical piece is that if I've had two names, I can't actually be either. You know, who I am. We are not. We've got a name, but that's not who we are. You know, sorry.
Yeah.
We're not. That's not who we are. The truth never changes, right? You know, our names are just a label, like the label son or brother in my case, or you know, dad's furry dad to two dogs and two pigs. You know, it's just a label. We aren't our name. But I can see some people get really confused about that. But I've just been very fortunate. But so it comes in waves. And one of the things that always comes to me loud and strong when I'm talking to a fellow adoptee about search is the persistence.
Ah, okay.
So, you know, like it comes in waves, but once we've decided, if it comes in waves, if we're in the boat, if once we've got in the boat, we row like hell and nothing's going to get in our way. Sometimes we get out of the boat and we step off the wave, and we step off the wave because for whatever reason we don't feel that we need to go. So as you reflect back on on your search and your persistence and your dead ends and your, sorry, that's a really horrible thing to say.
Ooh, it was a very good pun, actually.
Well, it was a shockingly inept pun, completely unintentional. What have you learned about yourself through that search that might help other adoptees who are listening going through that search?
Oh, goodness. A couple things. Like, I'll call them prizes from the search, you know. Um, Almost like a hero going out on a quest. We do find prizes, and they may not be what you thought you were looking for. You may not find the Holy Grail, but you'll get a prize. And for me, it is the wonderful surprise of finding out that I'm related to a lot of writers, working writers, and that's something I loved. And it didn't match my adoptive family. And so it was just nice to be a piece of a larger puzzle and fit and go, oh, okay. This isn't an odd thing. This isn't an odd avocation or ability. It makes sense from the pool that I came from. And just sort of that sense of, oh, okay, I see that I'm just one piece of this larger pool of people that love the written word, for example. Um, Gosh, there's now I'm stepping aside and not answering you directly, but you directly, but it's an answer. My son got something from my search that was a prize, and as his mom, I love it. My sister Melissa unfortunately died of what we're now calling COPD. It used to be called emphysema because she was a really bad smoker, and was a bad way to go. My son heard that, and it took him 3 days of withdrawal from nicotine, but he quit smoking too. So I feel like if there's anything that I could have asked of Melissa as an aunt to my children, it would be something like get my son to stop smoking. So that was certainly not my intent, for search, but that you find these things that happen. It's almost like reality becomes more real. Oh yeah, my writing isn't this weird fluffy thing. It's grounded in abilities that other people in my gene pool have. Or, oh, I'm immortal, I'm a teenager, I can smoke. It's, oh wow, someone who is my aunt died from this. I think I'll stop. So it's a very grounding thing for me. It's, I think, a grounding thing for the next generation too, to have that connection back through generations. Um, let's see, what have I gotten from it that's been interesting? Um, if I hadn't searched, I wouldn't know you, Simon. You wouldn't know me. And I
Yeah,
have to
I'm the
say,
booby prize, right?
no, no, no. I have had quite a few conversations where we get each other in a way that not everybody else does. Um, There's a radio show, for example, there's a radio show called The Moth on National Public Radio in the United States, where you tell stories. And they got a group of adoptees together. And and you probably understand this. If you get a group of adoptees together and someone says, "What's your story?" We can tell you our story. Whatever part of the search we're in or not yet in, we can tell you our story. And the producer of the show said, I have never encountered a group that so easily could find a tellable story, an entertaining story.
Yeah.
So we've got that.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's sad, even if we hit, I'll say it, dead ends, we've got a story. And gosh, at one point I was cataloging number of online groups, and it was in the hundreds for adoptees and for search and reunion. So we are a tribe, and finding this tribe has been a prize.
I'm going to go back to the booby prize, right? Because it's something that I want to. I did it with. Hopefully, you could hear the listeners can hear the laugh in my voice, right? And it's self-deprecating. I don't really think I'm a booby prize.
Thank you. You're such good. You're crossing the Atlantic and getting us listening to each
other. One of these things that is supposedly a thing that is that adoptees have is kind of like low self-esteem and insecurity, and I've done all my learning over the last 15 years about what makes us tick, right? With non-adoptees, and none of them think they're good enough either, right? So this is the secret. This is the secret that nobody's telling. Nobody thinks that they're good enough. So if somebody says to me, "Oh well,
wait. So it's not just you and me.
It's not just us two. It seems to be a universal malaise, okay? And we've all got a different reason, and we've got a compelling logic that we could argue in court and win for the reason that we're not good enough. So for some, it may be because they're adopted. For some, it may be because they haven't achieved what they wanted to achieve career-wise. For some, it may be because they've failed to stop their son dying of lung cancer. For some, it may be because they're overweight. For some, it's they haven't fulfilled their childhood dream to, I don't know, win the NBA, or we've all got a different reason. We've all got a really compelling truth, a really compelling reason that we're not good enough. But just because it's compelling, it doesn't mean it's true, right? It doesn't mean it's true, and
that's why.
And the stories, like we're all urged to tell stories, right? So to share our stories. If I'd shared my story 15 years ago, if I did, when I shared my story 15 years ago, it with a group of people on a course about discovering who you are, it transpired that my story of who I thought I was a complete and utter work of fiction. An utter work of fiction. The voice in my head that told me that I wasn't good enough is just a liar.
Okay.
The voice in the stuff about my birth mother rejecting me and the teddy bear being a consolation prize was totally untrue. That's what I found out further down my search. And I hit a dead end. I found out that my mother had died of cancer, right? My birth mother had died of cancer.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that.
She died before I started looking, a long time before I started looking, or even thinking about looking. But the story I told myself about her not loving me enough to keep me, that was complete fiction. And this is one of the things that that I really scares me, actually, is that we're all because I've shared the story, and I've shared it with people who have also shared their stories, and they had the voice in their head saying that they weren't good enough either. That's why I know all this stuff, right? A group of 6, 8 of us, and every one of us, the story that we had about who we were was false, and it wasn't about our truth. So that's my concern about stories. Now there's fiction, and there's fiction, and there's the fact. I heard somebody put this in summed it up in a beautiful way. An American fellow, he said, I thought I was watching CNN, but actually I was watching the Comedy Channel.
Okay.
So,
is there that much difference sometimes? Okay.
have you heard of the heroes? The hero's journey. Have you come across that in the
Otto Rank, Joseph Campbell.
Joseph
Yeah.
Campbell? You heard about that stuff,
He
yeah?
popularized it. Yeah.
Yeah, you heard about that.
Yeah. So I teach writing workshops, how to write a mini memoir for adoptees. When we do flash fiction, and we do it by steps, so it's easy, and it doesn't need to be a novel. It could be the beginning or a full book. Um, and that's one of the two ways it's easy to start. They say that most adventures are quests, and not all. And the quest kind is the hero goes out on the journey, or there's the stranger comes to town. For me, the phone call from the UK was like the stranger coming to town, and it happened to me. And my adoptive mother was over visiting her granddaughter, by the way, at the time. So it happened to both of us at the same time. The hero going on the quest, that was when, after 3 years of waiting, I decided I wanted to find my American birth father. Now I was the hero. Before, the center of the story was the stranger in England that came to town through the phone, as it were.
So, how does that process help the people that you work with, the adoptees that you work with, find their truths, find their truth about who they are, realize their potential, that sort of stuff? How does it help?
Oh, I think in the most important way, you've already hit the nail on the head. We're not alone. We're not alone. Some of the reasons, sometimes I think we think that our story is so unique, and the negative can get magnified and magnified and magnified. It's because it's happening between our two ears, and we're not sharing it. And sometimes when we share it, we can get feedback that, oh, that's not true of you. You're actually a lovely person. Or, oh, you're not the only one who's felt that way. I think that's typical for adoptees. We've all felt that way. It's not your fault. Or, no, it's babies were placed for adoption not because they had terrible personalities or they weren't smart enough. They were babies. This is not a personal decision. That was something that came from talking to other adoptees. That's not something that happened between my two ears. I needed to go out on that journey, be that hero, and that meant connecting with other adoptees, listening to birth mothers, and then meeting my birth father and listening to birth fathers. I'm lucky. I live about an hour west of New York City, and since about 1990, there's been a monthly group that meets, and it was for adoptees, adoptive parents, and birth parents, and it's kind of faded away, and we've kind of revived it now. Monday nights, we have a group for adoptees from the closed record era and donor conceived people, and they are also busy like we were, coming up with these stories between their ears. Oh, the person donated anonymously because they didn't love me, or they knew I would be a loser, or a consolation prize, or a booby prize. And it's good to be talking now, us closed record era adoptees. I don't know if that's a phrase. and what we've gone through, and now share it with people who are just beginning that journey, who were, what we call them DCPs in the United States, donor conceived people, and to hear the same things coming back from brilliant, talented, wonderful, kind, amusing people thinking those same things.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating, and that's our once a month thing, Monday nights, that we do.
Yeah. It's this, the cultural stuff never ceases to amaze me, Michele. So the part that you said that we were ahead of you in terms of, as in UK ahead of the US, in terms of opening the files, but in terms of willingness to, and you kind of equated that to willingness to talk about it, and I would say that what you guys, and I would say North Americans, I'd say kind of Canadians as well as Americans, are far more open to talking about this stuff than us stiff upper lip Brits. All the groups that you have.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
There's far more groups of you doing it. There's far more appetite to come on the podcast and talk about it, because we're talking emotional things. So it's interesting, and you're you're kind of, obviously you're far more, not obviously, but it's obvious to me, but the people from the US are far more ahead in terms of kind of like desire for self-help and self-actualization, all that sort of stuff. Your history is far richer than ours in the UK about that stuff.
Oh, that's interesting.
Um,
Let me throw this out, and I wonder if maybe this helps explain this phenomena that you noticed. The group that started in my town in 1990, decades before records opened in any region near us, was started by an adoptive mother, two adoptive mothers. One adoptive mother who was in AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, a 12-step program, and another adoptive mother whose son's birth mother contacted them, and they got together. And the mother that was familiar with AA and had found sobriety for the last several decades of her life took that format. So this group that started in Morristown was really modeled after of 12 steps. And so some of the language is there too. And 12 steps is, the Oxford group started in England, in Oxford, I believe. And then it kind of, I guess, reincarnated itself as 12 steps in the United States. And I think there's like 60,000 groups. You can go within easy driving distance to a 12-step meeting of some sort or other. And we are just, it's in our culture, it's in our screenplays. And so in the US, we say things like being in reunion. That comes from the 12-step lingo of being in recovery. Or someone comes out as a birth parent, just as someone comes out as the friend or family of an alcoholic. And so we have this funny network. And based on my experience, I know that we have this multi-decades long group that was meeting 30 years before records were opened in New Jersey, where we're located. And it was because we borrowed that format of 12 steps.
Yeah.
My theory, but it's only one theory.
So what other prizes have you found along the way?
Other prizes.
Or prizes you found, or prizes that you've seen other adoptees find along their way?
Oh my goodness. I definitely say certain people. I have cousins up in Boston, first cousins through my birth mother, that I just like. Even if we weren't related, I'd want them in my life, and that's wonderful. Our youngest doesn't have many children in my adoptive family the same age, but the Boston relatives have a son the same age, and so they get to grow up together. Just sort of finding more people that you would want in your life anyway is a good thing. There's, I can't, it's hard to explain. So, someone who lives along the Mississippi River where I've never been sent me a whole bunch of black and white photographs that she digitally through email of our shared ancestors. And I just felt a kind of settledness to see that I can, like other people, if I wanted to, talk about what my great great grandmother was doing or where my grandparents lived. And it's something I didn't really know that I missed. When I look back, I can see that in decisions I made and in actions I took, but I was in such a fog. It's almost, I didn't know it was something I was missing until I had it and felt that feeling of, these photos are mine. These are my people. I mean, I was raised not knowing anything about my birth father's background, and that was a decision made by the adoption agency for various reasons. And it's amazing to me that I was a journalist who worked in the New York City press corps, and we're not a very shy bunch of people. We're Fleet Street, we're very posh and refined, right? And yet,
No.
I didn't think to ask a question because it was, oh, get this, it was inappropriate for me to ask about my birth father.
Who said that?
I thought it. Between
right.
It was inappropriate for me to want any information about him. Oh, the questions I have no issue or hesitation asking. I guess, like you said, us North Americans. But even being a North American, I stopped at that. So the seeing that I was stopping at that and questioning it was a prize.
So would you like my opinion on how you come to settle, how you came to settle?
I'd love it, because right now I'd have no words. I actually framed a picture and I've hung it on the wall, and it's too far away for me to run and get and show you. But every time I look at it, I just kind of go, ah. So any theory is welcome. I love this feeling.
It's the end of the search. So I heard this expressed by a really gifted guy who I name check quite a lot, a guy called Rupert Spira. He's a British guy.
Okay.
And he says, we're looking for something, and then we get it, and the quest ends, and we feel happy, and we think the thing that we got led to the happiness, so we go after the same thing again.
Do you think that's why searches happen in waves? Perhaps you get a little bit of that satisfaction and then you want to go out and get some more?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe.
That makes us sound a little bit like Viking Raiders, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but
heroes on a quest. Let's go and
I was, as you were telling about the hero's quest earlier on, I was thinking of Camelot, and you mentioned Holy Grail, right? So I was thinking of Camelot, but I've never seen that really. I don't really get that. I never read any books or watched any films about that. But I have seen Spamalot, which is the Monty Python West End show, which is a Mickey take of Camelot, which is very funny.
okay.
And I've not seen
probably
any...
shorter. I bet it's a lot short. I bet it's a lot shorter.
I don't know. I don't know how long the original thing is. I don't know. But I was also thinking of Gladiator, right? So there's the movie starts with pretty much starts with the death of his of Maximus's wife and kids, and then when he dies at the end, he's reunited with them. So it's sad that he's died, but it's happy that he's reunited with his, and you know, that's kind of what came to my mind. But one of the questions that that is always on my mind when I think about search and reunion is the extent to which we as adoptees are the extent or not, right? We are pinning hopes of our happiness on the search being successful and the reunion being successful, and we all live happily ever after. And it's Disney, isn't it? It's another story, and that. So we're delaying happiness. We're putting our happiness on hold for something in the future, and that concerns me. Because anybody putting their happiness on hold for anything concerns me, because it stops us being happy in the moment now, and it kind of stacks against my own search. Was the second wave of the search happened because I was sitting in a therapist room, and the idea of my birth mother rejecting me again, rejecting is in air quotes, listeners, right? I don't do air quotes, but I would do that. So rejecting again, that scared me to death. And then something within me, whether it's my true self or whether it's my ego, who knows, said, I'm not going to let that fear stop me, that fear of rejection stop me. So I'm going to renew my search.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
So my search came from a place of spite, anger, and empowerment, not the dream of the happy ending. Do you know what I mean? So so I wonder how much, you know, we've got, because I've done a lot of delayed gratification in my business life, right? So I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I hit this business. I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when. So, but I've learned a lot of stuff, and I've been trying to, share that with others over the last 10 years. And I found some peace this morning. Was prompted by an insight I had listening to a podcast this morning, and I wrote it down in my little book here as the exhaustion of trying to change the world, and the peace of being enough.
I like that. Yes. The exhaustion of trying to change the world and the peace of being enough. I like that a lot.
I'm not a writer like you, right? At 8, I was advised to read more books because my English was poor compared to my maths, right?
Oh dear.
And funny enough, when
well, I wish I had your math skills then.
All right. And you know, 8 years later, I passed all my exams. We take, public exams at 18. Sorry, 16 and 18. I passed all the, C is a pass. C is a pass, and A is the best that you could get when I got it. And I got like English language and English literature. were C's and everything else was A's and B's, right? So this kind of wordsmithing like that, the exhaustion of trying to change the world and the peace of being enough, that's not a natural thing like it is for clearly for you as a writer.
Oh, I don't know. You just sparked something that's really interesting, and you, you've said very succinctly and wisely something I've had floating around since a conversation I had with someone about search. Um, there's something to be said for pausing in a search and realizing you're getting exhausted and just finding peace with whatever you found so far, whether it's a rejection from my birth father or questions that are still unanswered, but kind of settling and finding peace. And they talk about, and I'm not an academic, there's probably a much trendier word or phrase that English departments are using now, but I was reading something about Shakespeare once, and they talked about his pastoral interludes. See, I used air quotes, but no one who's listening can tell. Pastoral interludes. And it was really a well thought out dramatic point in the hero's quest or the hero's story where there was just a peacefulness. It wasn't the resolution, it wasn't the end of the story, but there was a pastoral time where Moses wasn't dealing with the Hebrews, the Egyptians, the slaves, the pharaohs. He went off to Midian and he becomes a shepherd and he marries and he takes care of sheep and he, helps heal lambs, and that's his pastoral interlude. And maybe he needed that before he could take on the exhausting job of going back, dealing with the Egyptians and the Hebrews and parting the Red Sea and, leading the Exodus and all of this heroic stuff. But there has to be a point where, and I hit it, where I needed a pastoral interlude. And I don't know if maybe that's a bit of what you're also saying, where I was exhausted from trying to engage my birth mother for those 3 years, finding my birth father who was welcoming and then very rejecting. And after a while, I was like, I think I'll go work in the garden. That seems like a better use of my time, and I know that I'll get reward from it. And I was trying to say that, and someone who is, I don't know, have you heard this term, an adoption competent therapist?
Yes, I've heard that phrase.
Okay, it was new to me. And she was saying, well, if you'd had an adoption competent therapist, they would have helped you craft a letter to send to your birth father. And I'm thinking, oh, that just even now looking back, and he's passed away, so that window of opportunity is closed. I don't regret not having an adoption competent therapist to help me draft the bludgeoning letter to make him do what he might not have done anyway. I needed my pastoral interlude to say, well, how he is, I accept that. I still have questions, I accept that. I'm going to go work in the garden right now. And something to be said for having a pastoral interlude, even if we are a hero on a quest. And it doesn't mean we're not persistent. We're allowed to have those pastoral. Yeah. I love what you wrote.
There's a lot in there. I was thinking that the kind of like the rest finds us, right? The peace finds us.
Ah, okay.
So like we have an insight, and like your son didn't go on a stop smoking course. He didn't. He didn't listen to a. He didn't listen to an audiobook on how to quit smoking. He didn't manifest this. He didn't, or do all the stuff that everybody does to change. Right? He just had an insight.
Yeah, he integrated this new realization that, oh, people die from this. It's real. Someone
that's
die from this.
My word insight is shorthand for your integrated the realization. So it's we're saying the same things. You're just more wordsmithing it.
Sorry about that.
No, don't apologize for your skill. You know, and this is the funny thing, right? It is that you know, somebody told you you're a writer, and somebody told you to ask a therapist to help you write. Well, who's got a better chance, right? Who do you want to write your letter? A therapist or a writer? You know, who do you want to paint? Who do you want to paint your bedroom? Do you want a painter to paint your bedroom, or do you want a plumber to do it?
Oh, that's interesting.
So the advice that people give, and I'm really bad at unsolicited advice because I do it quite a lot, and I know that I shouldn't do it.
And I want to say that I'm not opposed to adoption aware or adoption competent therapists. If you're an adoptee, that's probably way better than an adoption incompetent therapist, right? But it just has to be forced, perhaps.
If you're an adoptee and you want some therapy, get an adoption competent therapist. If you are a writer, then write your own letter. If you want a painter, then get a painter, not a plumber. And don't tell a writer to get a plumber to write a letter. It doesn't stack. And like everybody's got an opinion and a suggestion, and that is just a bonkers suggestion, isn't it? It's like me saying get a plumber to paint my bedroom. Why? I want a painter to paint my bedroom. I want a writer to write my letter. You know, if I want to learn to write my memoir, right, adoption memoir, I go to somebody that's done it, like you have, and they have learned some stuff that can help me along the way. And the whole purpose of this podcast is to help people along the way. We want to learn from people that are ahead of us on the journey. That's always the case. Yeah, that's we pay for somebody that's been through stuff. And I say this a lot.
Oh my goodness. So Simon, are you saying that I'm a wise old crone?
I'm saying you're a wise young crone.
I'll be a wise old crone that you meet along the mountain way, and I will share my wisdom with you, and then you can do great.
Yeah, well, like kind of Yoda or something, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully.
I watched the first Star Wars in 1978, and I've never watched another one, but I believe that he's quite a wise guy. So, what was I going to say? Don't listen. Be careful. Here's my unsolicited suggestion for the listeners, right? Be careful who you take advice from, and make sure that advice stacks up. You know, get the right person for the job. You know. What else I was going to say? Yeah, I was going to say, I do say this. I don't know if I said this recently on a podcast, but I've said it in other conversations, right? Adoption, it seems to be the only it seems to be one of the only places where we take advice from people that are struggling. So somebody like, I see a lot of, I believe it's called trauma dumping. I see a lot of trauma dumping by people who put themselves forward as you know, like adoptee leaders. You know,
what is trauma dumping? That's an interesting expression. I'm not sure.
Trauma dumping is just dumping your trauma. It's just writing about, you know, so a lot of stuff goes on a lot of stuff goes on online. You know, my life is poo. I'm an adoptee. My life is poo for this reason, and everybody comes in. Yeah, my life is poo for exactly the same reason. I'm an adoptee too, and everybody validates one another, and we fall further and further down into the poo. That's what happens when I go around. If I go around bitching about stuff, then I fall further into the bitch. I go further down the abyss, and well, no, that's not. You know, and I don't want to. I don't want to learn from somebody like that. I'm not going to. I'm not going to be. I want to learn from somebody that's ahead of me on the journey, not behind me on the journey. And I want to hear from somebody. I want to listen to somebody that's doing well. I don't want to. And so I don't want to take. I saw this in a. I went to a marketing group years ago, 15 years ago, and there was a woman who was doing healthy food. She did healthy food for schools, and she was, let's just say that she was the way she looked didn't fit that.
Ooh, okay.
And who wants to follow? Who wants to take advice from a? Let's go back to a smoking metaphor, a smoking story. So who wants to be told to stop smoking by an MD or a GP? That's the UK equivalent term. Who's on 60 a day? You know, we don't want to. We want to take advice from people that are ahead of us and who are walking the talk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if search and reunion, if you're lucky enough to have a reunion, gets you to realize that you really don't want to be a smoker, that's a wonderful prize. If it introduces you to relatives that you'd want as friends anyway, that's a wonderful prize. If you learn that even though you work in New York City journalism or Fleet Street journalism, and you're weighed down by propriety on one topic and one topic only, that's something you've learned about yourself, and it's an interesting place to learn more. You know, there are so many people writing memoirs now, at least in the United States, or now that we've begun to open records. We have a ways to go. It's only 31 states out of 50, but we're getting there. That is a kind of creativity that gets awakened if you start to ask the questions. And no number of therapists or whoever are going to give you the outcome you want. I sincerely believe that if I'd had this wonderful therapist back then who dictated what kind of letter I should send to my birth father, that given the complexity of our story, it wouldn't have changed things. And I actually liked being in charge of it instead of listening to that particular wise old crone. There is something about going out and having questions to ask that is so energizing and empowering, but you don't get to own the answers. You don't get to own everyone else's reactions, but you do get to own the questions that you ask. This can be so wonderful. And you can ask questions of people that are further along. For me, that meant English memoirs, because England was where the reunions were happening. It wasn't really happening that much here. With our monthly group, now donor-conceived people are asking questions. So, I know that my parents who raised me have kept this secret. They don't know I know the truth. How did you, as adoptees who were not told the truth, finally tell, or did you tell your adoptive parents that you know? And so there's all sorts of wonderful conversations and self-learning that can come from this, I believe.
Yeah.
And
that's
to take a pause and have a pastoral interlude and go work in the garden if you prefer. That's legitimate.
Yeah. So I'm going to link to your books and all your socials in the show notes, so people can check out more about your books. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Oh yeah, I'm supposed to say this. I was told I was supposed to say this. In May, the third novella is coming out. I have a series. I guess, Simon, you and I have talked about it, but listeners might not know. I've written, I've written very long ago a series of novellas called The Birth Fathers Club. And it's fictionalized, but a lot of the details of stories come from birth fathers I've met over the years through legislative work or from these monthly meetings where birth parents, including birth fathers, do come in and share their story. The first two came out in late 2021. The third one, Finding Faith, has some of my story in it, very fictionalized, because it has to be part of the larger story. And that comes out May this year.
Okay. So that's we're recording this in March 2022 for anybody that's listening in years to come. So as I say, there'll be links in the show notes. So once if you're what I'll do is I'll just go back and tweak the show notes in May. You tell me when it comes out and we'll add the extra links in.
Okay,
do that.
I will do that.
Take me 2 seconds. So thank you very much for listening and sharing the prizes that you found along the way.
And one of the prizes was you, Simon Ben, and your podcast, because I would never have gotten the chance to listen to your podcast if I hadn't searched. I wouldn't know about this wonderful, vibrant culture that's now blossoming.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's easier than we think to accept compliments. And I can speak with the booby prize to do that. Oh no!
Banish that word. Banish that phrase.
Don't go down that ruse again, Simon. Right. This is British kind of wacko humour. Not as funny as Spamalot. So check out Spamalot. It's far better than my humour. Right. Thank you, Scott listeners, and thank you, Michele. You've been a star. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you, Simon. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you.
Speak to you soon, listeners. Bye-bye.